Smoking a lot of cigarettes lately, but inside it's just a little baby. Oh, it's okay to say you got a weak spot. You don't always have to be on top. Better to be hated than love for what you're not. You're vulnerable, you're vulnerable. You are not a robot. You're lovable, so lovable, but you're just trouble. Guess what? But you are so magnetic. Pick up all the pins. Never committing to anything. You don't pick up the phone when it rings. Don't be so pathetic. Just open up and sing. I'm vulnerable. I'm vulnerable. I'm not a robot. You're lovable, so lovable.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Mind Clash Podcast, episode 75. Squeaky wheels. And yeah, we'll get into how you grease those squeaky wheels, especially around the EVE community, in our Meg segment, where we cover all of the March patch news around this SOV and fatigue changes. And to get through those interesting topics, we are joined by a slew of very knowledgeable guests. We will start with the top, Sven Holstein.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Sven Holstein from Capel, the head Diplo and I guess infrastructure manager for the Alliance.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us. Orion, producer as always.
Ryan Solo, FC for Lethal Injection, and proud member of Triumvirate.
Stepping in to sell his wares, Opus Magnum.
Hello, I'm Opus Magnum. I fly with NC Dot inside the DICE Corporation, Destructive Influence. I'm the CEO of EVE Onion.
Beautiful. Pittsburgh.
What's going on? Pittsburgh, Goonswarm FC, and proud member of Shadow State.
Probably the best Gorp in Goons.
For sure.
Definitely. It's not Gwen's. And Billy.
I am Villy. I guess I lead the military test alliance, Please Ignore, and to a degree by extension, the Legacy Coalition.
Sound reluctant to admit that.
Not at all.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Last week we covered through a lot of the assault frigates and balance changes that were announced for the March changes, and this week CCP did not disappoint, coming out with more changes that sparked the community to be eager and interested. Has the Onion been covering much of these changes?
We have. We've covered them. We've uncovered them, and we covered them back up. We find that it's too legit, and we think something's up with it.
You mean like too legit to quit? Like,
that's kind of what we're thinking, right? So what's happening in CCP that they want to push all these changes without? I mean, was anyone upset about a single change? I mean, I don't think anybody was. This is like a record. Like, I'm pretty sure from what we've heard from anonymous sources inside CCP is that for the first time, every single CCP employee was actually like glued to Reddit, like soaking up all the rays of goodness that was coming out from those pages to them. Now, however, though, CCP Fozzie was pretty bummed. He's used to seeing at least a couple of hashtag Fire Fozzies every day. He didn't get a one, so he's actually thinking about quitting at this point because he just doesn't feel like people hate him enough anymore.
That's unfortunate. Like, the salt must flow.
Evidently. But in other news too, Jin Tan leaving to go to, Tappy test is big news for CCP as well, just because we're wondering if maybe some, metagaming was happening kind of with Aerith and the judge there. So we're kind of investigating that as well.
Seems fishy.
I mean, why would you leave a top tier alliance like, Pravi Block to go to Tappy? I mean, Billy's the head FC there, like military director.
Maybe he's desperate for a shield super.
Well, that's really all we have.
Is it supposed to be trolling, or is it just like hot shots over the bow?
No, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a little trolly, but yeah, wow. Yeah, so yeah, that kind of messed up there.
Play with fire, you will get burned.
I know, right? That's very true. So yeah, in the last bit of information we have, we do know of a grassroots initiative. Some people out in the backwoods of Dronelands have started the Cult of Swordians. Basically, their follow is a Sword Dragon. They're saying that the CSM minutes actually prove that without Sword, that Eve would still be dying. So they're basically saying that Swordicus is the son of Bob, and he saved the CSM and he saved Eve. So they expect to see more of them coming out of the woodwork as their, belief system and whatever religion grows.
I mean, wormholes aren't real, so...
I know, right? But these guys think Sword Dragon is a god, and they expect everyone else to convert.
You won't see me converting anytime soon. Well, great. If we want to hear more on these details, where's the best place to find you?
You can find more at eveonion.com and our Twitter account, eveonionnews.
Beautiful. Well, you should all definitely check that out. Some good premium top tier news. All right. Well, the CCP announced this week that along their string of decisions to phase out and delete features in the game, which are no longer up to par, requiring the amount of dev time that they should be putted towards it, and all towards stepping towards an Eve 64-bit client, it was announced that the Eve voice was going to be eliminated this next patch in March. I'm sure we are all avid Eve voice users.
At one point in time, we tried to use Eve voice and couldn't figure out how to use it.
I think I used it like in 2013 to try to do incursions.
Yeah, I think incursions was probably the most common usage of it. I know I had to use it as a backup comms suite when we had our Mumble crash for an afternoon in the middle of a fleet. It was like a desperation comms, but it did okay, but nobody uses it. There's some pretty obvious reasons.
Oh, the prevalence of Discord, the prevalence of TeamSpeak, Mumble, all of great out-of-game chat clients, and they're free and easy. They're just like super easy to use. Like, I've seen whole corps and alliances organized on Discord.
Yeah, and I mean, it has the one crucial thing that you said there, which is out of game. So, not affected by lag, server crashes, etc. Unlike eVoice, which was always its kryptonite.
For sure. I think the announcement in the dev blog stated like 1% 0.2% of the community is still using it.
Get a voice and 10% tie-dye. Can't hear anything.
Well, everything's
I've never actually experienced it under tie-dye like that, but I've been, I've used it when the system crashed, and then you just don't get to say anything on comms because it doesn't work. So
For sure. Another one of those features I don't think will be missed. Is there any other features you guys see that should just be phased out? I mean, they phased out the Dust Soldiers still being in chat. They phased out all that. They phased out, obviously, walking in stations, another part of the high maintenance part of the client.
I think those were the big ones. I think those are the ones that were for better or worse, frivolous.
Yeah, I've definitely seen, like, there's content out in space, which I think should be phased out or just let go and then allow for new creative ideas to be put in place. Like, I just don't think some content should be forever available, you know? But good on CCP for deciding that a piece of the game is just not worth putting that dev time into it and refocusing onto the other stuff. Some of that other stuff is obviously the agency event sites. Today is the last day for the Guardians Gala. If you haven't run those sites, if you haven't reached your stretch rewards, you have like 9 hours left to bang out some points, collect some skins. I've been running a lot of them. Have you guys been running many?
I can't. You've been doing them all.
That is not true.
I just pay like a couple $100 million and buy them all.
You guys seeing any advantage of the webbing hardwirings that are coming out of the VIP sites?
I'm sure there's a lot of happy Loki and Rapier pilots out there.
Maybe for fleet aspect, but actually like a nano Loki, it takes the place of the Zor implant, and if you're nanoing, you'd probably want the Zor implant over 7% webs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis on those things. But yeah, I know a lot of our Hugin pilots were super excited to get some of those.
Chat is clamoring for a pilot named Itachi to be on the show. I'm not opposed to having anyone on the show.
Confirmed Itachi for CSM.
It's a wide-going meme.
Excellent. Well, I mean, keep in mind that if you want those extra skill points from the boosters, that the boosters will be still in effect for quite a few more weeks, and that the +10, the +12, and the 6-day long +10 will be available right up until the end. I'm not exactly sure what date that is. It'll probably coincide with the next agency event rolling out, which we've seen a bunch of drops onto CC from what's coming in a little bit in the future. Most excitingly is perhaps a player flyable line of ships from the, I'm going to butcher this, Tagachian Collective. These appear to be some sleek brown modeled ships similar to Drifter models, but with articulated wing and body sections which open up to what appears to be a small sun or energy weapon in the center of their ship. It's really fucking cool looking. The potential that these could be player flyable is really fucking cool. I mean, this could be a Doomsday. This could be a AoE projection weapon.
It's interesting to see. I'm sure people would love to see new ships. God only knows what those things are going to be able to do, and it could be alluding to the possible new space opening up and whatnot.
Well, I mean, it's only been 12 years of promises of Joe Space. Maybe we'll get those before shield implants.
I mean, maybe. There's a lot of cool shit that's been seeded onto CC, including massive environments, including these new Itachian collective ships, a new battleship for the Society of Conscious Thought. All perhaps coming out during the next agency event around the 15 years of EVE Online.
I'd just be happy if they could finally announce when they're going to release the Angel Capitals.
Ooh, not sure.
I'm kind of hoping we'll see an iteration of a bit more storyline on that, maybe. It could be probably why this Trig group is coming around to set up something like that.
Well, I'm really excited for that. We're going to stay on it as a storyline. We've been following the Drifter stuff. There was more Drifter fleets out this weekend in random locations in K-Space. So they were once again damaged, and people were dispatching them, groups of 30 plus. We covered a lot of that on last week's show. If you want to go through, Makoto goes into depth of some of the tinfoil, and we're going to try to have him back on here next week and continue to follow the tinfoil as it rolls out, and we see what the CCP has in store for us. All right, before we get into our main topic, I just wanted to thank the War Deck Project for sponsoring this show. The War Deck Project is an open Discord group focused on the discussions of war decks in hopes of collectively proposing better systems and mechanics to the CSM and CCP on making war decks better. So if you're interested in war decks, proposals, design, join the War Deck Project in their Discord and get the war decks fixed. I think they definitely need to be fixed. All right, let's jump into our topic of the week. CCP announced this week through a dev blog that two major systems of the game, what appears to be brought to you by the CSM's heavy pressure on this at the summit, will be changes to sovereignty warfare and jump fatigue. Definitely under discussed topics. So let's start, because this is a lot to cover. Let's start with the jump fatigue changes. So the proposed change in March, this is the March patch, is a 95 reduction on the cap of fatigue accumulation. It would reduce the maximum possible jump fatigue, the blue timer, from the current 4 days to a maximum of 5 hours, with the maximum possible jump activation cooldown, which is the orange timer, from 9.6 hours to 30 minutes. Now, obviously, the Phoebe jump changes were brought in back in the day to help restrain the power of the large blocks, to reduce power projection, to make it so that space had more topography, so that regions had more purpose behind how far the jump ranges are, how big the regions were, how you had to move across space. There was obviously problems around jump bridge networks that ferried people across the whole universe to any fight they chose. And obviously there were problems with anyone starting a siege, getting caught in tie-dye, and then the bad guys of your region coming to show up and killing your ships. Now, is this proposed change going to take us right back to the old power projection days of yore?
No.
Yeah, I really don't see that happening at all.
I think before the show, we were having an interesting topic in the chat with people like Vic Jefferson, who were super worried about defense fleets basically being overpowered. And I think a regional defense is going to be much stronger within 1, maybe 2 midpoints, but you're only talking about at best a 5-minute response. So even then, you still have time to get out So something like this, you're looking, like I was doing the math before the show, and it would take for Goon Swarm, because everybody, oh god, Goon Swarm has range with their capitals, or PL has range with their capitals. It would take Goons almost 30 to 40 minutes to get in range for Fade and Pureblind from Delve, and that's assuming the fleet's already formed up, and assuming you take a few gates to reduce it. And that's not even in range of DO6. And then likewise, it'd take another 20 minutes to get to Catch or Southern Provi. Like, if you have a local fight, like if Test got in a fight with Fraternity or NC or something way on the east side, it's not like the old where PL suddenly 10 seconds later shows up in your system. You're like, well, I just lost my cat fleet. Like, there's tons of time.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to change ganking in a whole big way. If you're going to have a prolonged cap fight, it will add quite a bit of interest to things, especially if there's groups in range within a mid or two.
So I look at this from the small guy perspective, right? I mean, Road's not very big, and the biggest concern is always like, okay, are we going to get counter-escalated? I mean, back before Phoebe, it was one of those things that you drop your carriers and your dreads. You do one cycle and you get out, because you can see on the map the Sino chain lighting up from the north, and you need to get out. I mean, now if someone's 3 mids away, it's going to be at least 45 minutes for them to get there. So you have some time to play with, right?
Yeah, there's a pretty significant amount difference from the way the current or the new mechanics will work versus the old. Probably the biggest capital fleet loss I ever took was I miscalculated a jump range. The 5 minutes of siege cycle time was enough for 4 mids instead of the 3. I thought it was only 3 mids to get to me, I thought it was 4 mids, and it turned out it was only 3 or whatever, and they were able to get to me within those 5 minutes, within the time of a single siege cycle. What you're looking at now is a situation where regional control within that 6 AU bubble is pretty much the same, but now you have the option of kind of expanding that 6 AU bubble to about a 12 AU bubble, or a jump and a mid, basically, where you can exert influence effectively. And you'll have the option to expand one more jump in terms of playing with the mechanics, in terms of you can get a cap fleet there, not necessarily get it home quickly or effectively. So definitely there'll be impacts of this, especially in areas where there's alliances that are not necessarily friendly to each other within a 2 or 3 mid situation, much like a large chunk of the south and southeast is. So that's definitely going to open up some conflict opportunities in that area for sure.
Yeah, they were talking about this on Jeff Rader's show, how some areas are now going to have some groups are going to have a larger power projection umbrella, and they'll be able to have some overlap with other groups that have different ideologies, different alliances. So you're going to have a lot of friction along those borders, right?
Yeah, exactly. It previously stood like you could basically protect within 6 AU. That was your bubble. That's everybody's situation, and anything outside that, it was, I don't want to say a wasteland, but it wasn't feasible to project to those locations in many ways. And this kind of opens it up a little. I don't know if it'll change the dynamics enough, but it certainly allows for capital fleets to make the double and triple mids that they could not before at all. So if there's a fight happening in some big system 4 mids away, you can go those 3 mids. It's not a big issue. It's not I need to spend 4 hours doing one jump an hour, or else I'm going to be fatigued for a week. So it definitely is going to change the dynamics of small and medium scale capital combat, which is it should be interesting, to say the least.
I think another good part that a lot of people don't, I mean, he's more of a small guy kind of thing, but I mean, even for my corp, like we use capitals, okay, you get one jump, and your next jump is either you wait it out, or you go home, or you're stuck. Like, after your second jump, you're going to kill your blue timer for like the next day or two. Now it's, okay, cool, I can play Eve as much as I want today, and it doesn't matter if I jump. Tomorrow I'm not screwed, or I'm not waiting until next weekend to finally be able to jump again. Like, it's opened it up where you're not punished for playing the game and using your capitals.
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the meta of moving and doing anything with your caps right now is like one jump, wait out your blue timer, one jump, and that's about an hour right now. Under this new system, it'll be 30 minutes, right? In a typical play session, you could, 3 to 5 hours, you could move your ship, 6, 8 midpoints, no problem.
Well, and that's
the way the new system will work is you'll be able to go, one jump, 5-minute orange fatigue, two jumps, 7 or 12 minutes orange fatigue, and then the third jump you're up into the 20s, and then on the fourth jump you're basically max fatigue, I believe. But the thing is, once you hit max fatigue, it's still only 30 minutes, which is, half of what we're currently limited to just to not build fatigue as it is right now. And with the new system, no, people don't, everybody's got to go to sleep or, got other things to do. People can afford to have 5 hours of fatigue. It's no big deal. But the thing is, with the current system, the system, it goes from 1 hour to like 3 to 4 hours to like a day. And that's when it becomes a real issue. So this new system will definitely open up the opportunities for people to go basically as far as they want in many situations. If you're on for 6 hours, divide that by 30 minutes and add 2 or 3 jumps for your initial startup. You can go the entirety of the map if you really want to.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that is, like, say there's a big fight the next day, you can move your buddies or your corp or your alliance to go stage for that, go fight, and then come home and not be like, well, we're not jumping caps for the next week.
A quick shout out to Zarvox for the host. Thanks.
Well, with the 5 hours maximum blue timer, nobody cares about 5 hours of blue timer. It's something that's annoying for that play session, but especially if you plan around it, and which any major capital movement is going to be planned around, it's not going to be much of a factor at all, I would think.
It's also going to make it not cancerous just to go on fleets. So, like, the 9
Or just to take a jump bridge will be something you can do now.
Yeah, you can take a jump bridge, you can go on a fleet, and then actually be able to come home. Like when Goonswarm hit the 9-4 Keepstar, it took like an hour and a half to get up there, and then it took another hour to go back, and people were like, well, I guess I'll take aids and just won't jump tomorrow. Like it was stupid. Now it's like, okay, I can do all that one day, and tomorrow I can go do whatever with my ships. You're not punished for it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, there was some argument that what you do today shouldn't affect you tomorrow to the extent of I just want to use my ships in a normal way. Which I see that mentality. I mean, you should be able to jump around your own region and not take too much fatigue, and then be able to, bounce back to your stager and, log off for the night and not have to worry about, oh, well, I made 3 jumps in quick succession. Now I have 2.5 days of blue timer.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone really necessarily that thinks this is bad. This has been one of the most well-received decisions in CCP history. Everybody's forgotten what EVE was like pre-fatigue, but even with this reduced fatigue, you're never going to see things go back to the way they were. You're never going to be in a situation where you can jump, be in full cap fit, jump again in 45 seconds, jump, be in full cap fit, jump, where you can literally jump the entirety of the map in 10 minutes kind of thing. With this new system, you are limited in what you can do in a single session, but for the most part, you're not limited in a way that's really counterintuitive to fun gameplay. You're limited. Your mobility in the longer sense is limited, but it's a very acceptable amount of limitation, especially after the kind of the chains we've lived with for many years now. For most of us, this is just such a welcome relief that I can't think of anyone I've seen that has made a good convincing argument why this is a bad thing.
The only person who I've seen that has negative comments about this, or I guess group, is the people who are saying they're hunting in Delve. They're the only group in all of EVE, and they're like, "Oh well, faxes are so overpowered. You're not going to be able to kill any capitals." And it's like, okay, well, what? I'm sorry, your 20-man fleet can't contend with a super capital fleet that could jump 1 or 2 jumps and reach you. Like, why would that not make sense. Like if you want to kill a capital, use a capital. Don't complain that your little small roaming gang can't take somebody that's maybe 7 light years away from a staging system. Like, come on.
Yeah, they. Go ahead.
I think groups just have to be careful. Smaller groups, especially groups that are hunting, But past that, I mean, it's no different, really. No big changes. You just got to be a little more focused on what you're doing. You realize that groups can get you a lot quicker, so you need to be in and out.
Yeah, the other dissent towards the change as far as jump fatigue goes on the forums comes mostly in the form of a counter narrative to the big blocks getting stronger and getting more power projection over the little guys or areas of space that aren't fully settled by a large blue donut entity. Like this could allow, goons to exert their influence over not only Quarius, period basis, and Fountain, but further out into Cloud Ring, and then, maybe over Disdain.
The thing is, if you look at the math and based on the 5-minute timers and 10 or 12, whatever it jumps up to, you still can't. Like, you're talking I think it was like 30 minutes or something, or 25 minutes just to reach J5A from Goonswarm Capital. So that's like every time one of these discussions comes up, they're like, oh, Goons is going to break it. Look at where they could go. Like, no, I don't think people realize how big the regions are around. Like, you're not going to be able to exert the same thing. And then even with that, okay, what entities really hold any of the space around places like that? Like, Catch, if you go on that Catch pipe, is Evictus, and it's dead most of the time. Stain, pretty dead. Esoteria, there's huge chunks that are mostly dead. Pureblind, mostly dead. Fountain, almost all dead. Like, what are they complaining you're losing? There's nobody there that's going to get pushed out.
Yeah, I mean, there are groups that live in those areas. I mean, we live in Fountain, right? And we're only 400 guys, but we effectively use our constellation. We may not use our renter constellation. Some other group uses that. But, I mean, our space is well used. I mean, it doesn't take much space to house a group our size.
Yeah, but you're not oppressed. It's not like, oh god, Goonswarm is 1 mid away, even in the current system, because we could go 1 mid and like 2-3 gates, and we could range everything IA has. And instead, it's decent fights on occasion. Like US time zone, we've had good fights. It's not this overbearing, like, oh god, everything we do, you're going to eat supers. That's literally only in Delve, where people are ballsy because they know they have the fax fleet of Theta on them. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Well, and as much as Chad has been trolling about it, if you take a fleet out, 2-3 mids away to do something, and you do it without, the proper fax support, all that's going to happen is you're not going to get to come home with your ships. Sooner or later, you'll pay the price for it. You'll get away with it the first time and the second time, maybe the third or fourth. But after a point, somebody will realize what you're doing, and they'll say, they're only, bringing 10 fax with these 20 or 30 capital supers, whatever, and they'll make the price. They will make you pay the price. There is one thing in Eve that is consistent, is that if you are consistent, people will find ways to fuck with you.
Well, and the idea of goons extending all the way up in the Cloud Ring and all the way out towards Catch, I mean, that also that fails to take into consideration that the groups in the north, their super umbrella has extended, and Test super umbrella has extended. So now there's actually more chance that those capitals will come into contact with each other.
Yeah, I think if anything, that's a good thing that might come out of it, is now if you want to risk it, you could drop a dread or whatever on a Rorqual that's living out in the fringes, and maybe it escalates from there. Whereas currently it's like, all right, everybody just live within 6 light years, and there's nothing outside of it at all. Like, there's no reason to go roam in Quarius except for like the 1 or 2 dudes that maybe don't watch their intel. There's nothing there. Whereas now maybe Vic Jefferson and his dudes can go hunt somewhere there, because people might actually try living there and risk it on the 1 mid to save them.
All right, let's get into this little change that hunters should be really stoked about. All right, so people have complained about the invulnerability of jumping. I'm one of those people. So CCP is proposing in this March change in these words. We are currently planning a change for the March patch that would delay tethering for a short time after a sinusoidal jump. That delay would not impact docking, so if a ship jumps into an upwell structure that is large enough for them to dock in, they will still be able to dock immediately after the session change timer. So this small short time has been announced through the discussion thread as 30 seconds. And then, of course, if you are tackled, if you have aggression, if you have your fighters out, you will not be able to tether.
I think this is a great change.
Yeah. I like this as well. I think it's going to make you think a lot more about your movements.
Well, not only that, but I mean, we work pretty well or pretty close with NSH, and one of the things that always drove us crazy was a Sino goes up, you warp to the Sino, a super lands, and is perfectly safe on an Astra House, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now that super lands on the Astra House, you have time to scram it and kill it. It's not just, oh, we landed on a Rataru or an Astra House, and we're perfectly safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest group that could be negatively impacted is jump freighters.
Oh, not at all, because jump freighters can dock in even a Rataru.
Yeah, man, you can just instantly dock, or they go back to the old of jumping stations. Like maybe it adds a mid or something if one of their citadels dies, but I mean, it's not a big thing, I wouldn't think.
Well, isn't there the potential of like lag or session change timer or someone DCing and you could be, aggressed?
Yeah, but I mean, half the time when something like that happens, you tell CCP and, oh, I DC'd here because of XYZ, or there was tie-dye, whatever, and they just give you your ship back anyways.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of jump freighting service for our alliance, and I'm not worried about jumping to stations, right? Jumping to stations, you can still get screwed, but jumping onto Astra Houses right now is just easy mode. And even after this change, I just mash dock right away, and I'm good.
The thing is, too, it gives large block alliances the option to interdict somebody's deployment. Like, okay, I know Goonswarm wants to go to Hakonnen, or they're coming back from Hakonnen. Hey, sorry, Chief, if you miss that first move up, you're probably going to eat shit on the next one when you try to jump and it's you and 20 buddies or something. So it gives other options for fights, especially with the capitals.
To the spammy guys in chat, the Discord's right there. Have your guy join Discord. I'll bring him on.
Or are we getting the Itachi power?
I mean, the people ask. I mean, I'll give it a chance. I'm literally, this is a non-biased show. I'm literally open to every opinion.
Isn't he already in the chat? He just didn't come down.
I think it's peer pressure and mostly memeing. If Itachi wants to come on, he can poke me or Murdad sometime. He knows there's an open spot.
He's a reluctant hero.
He is.
Anyways, well, wait. As far as the tethering changes go, I think it's definitely going to result in a lot of dead supers in low sec. I think it'll have all kinds of interesting tactical implications for the way super capital fleets are forced to move in 0-0 when they're moving as a pack, or when they're moving as a fleet, or when they're moving solo. It will definitely change the gameplay and open up opportunities for people to interdict and harass and just cause all kinds of problems. I don't want to say it's a nightmare, but for some people, it's definitely going to, I have no doubt I will experience many headaches over this. But on the same token, I think it's a good thing. I think that citadels as they stand are just far, far too free when it comes to movement. It used to be, at least, in the old system, you would have to sino in off the boss and warp down to that boss, and so on and so forth. You couldn't just randomly jump in a Titan onto a Fortizar and know you're 100% safe before. So it's definitely going to create some interesting dynamics for mobility options. And I think all in all, it's a positive change for the game.
I think a lot of the hunting groups too should be particularly interested that now all those times that a carrier warps off and leaves his fighter somewhere, he knows he's going to land and he's not going to be tethered. So now he tries jumping and hits another citadel or something, or even you go to delve and all these idiots that just go to safe Sino and just hope for the best. They don't even check what intel says. I mean, that's opportunity aplenty to kill somebody right there, eve wide.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt there'll be some dead Titans on Keep Stars within a week or two. It's a Keep Star, nobody can shoot me, and then ta-da!
He gunned it.
Go ahead, sir.
Just saying, so they jump and oh shocker, nobody's gunning it. It's just a safe Sino fleet.
Well, that's exactly it, right? As much as a Keep Star is a safe platform, and a Fortizar as well, if there's not somebody gunning that, then it's just a location where you are in a better position to be sported, and you will tether in 30 seconds if not aggressed, or if not tackled, I should say. I believe during the Tri-FCON war, you guys killed a FCON Titan on the undock, right, and just moonwalked away because they couldn't find a gunner in time. There is a response time factor that has to be taken into consideration. Even if you know it's coming, you can't necessarily handle a force of 20 or 30 dreads dropped on your Keep Star to kill a Titan with just the Keep Star, right? You need faxes and everything else undocking to bail that dude out pretty quick. So it's definitely going to open up some interesting opportunities in terms of what people can do against Citadels.
Do you guys prefer this proposed change opposed to what Jintan spoke about briefly on Declarations of War, more like a garage door style, where you would have to warp set of Sino up at a distance from a Astra House or Keep Star and then warp down? Pretty much a no prohibited range.
Would you instant tether on the Astra House? Or
I think the proposed model that he was mentioning is just like you wouldn't be able to Sino in range of a structure, and then you would have to move to tether range.
The same as they did with passes for a brief time.
Yeah.
Well, then you're effectively just going back to the POS system, except if you get into warp, you're not in a bubble, you're on a Fortizar. So that would be back to the old system. I don't know if that's better. The problem is you can't fit enough capitals inside a POS anymore, so Fortizars are almost necessary. I think that would be okay, but that's certainly an additional level of vulnerability that would be added, and I don't know if necessary. And certainly it would make jump freighter traffic all but fucking impossible. So I think that kind of auto removes it as a possibility unless there was some consideration for that.
Yeah, I think this is just overall a more eloquent way of dealing with the problem.
Well, now that Billy brought it up, CCP is probably going to think of that and be like, "Oh, let's kill the jump freighters. Keep them local." So good thing that was for them.
Well, to be honest, actually, CCP's been has acknowledged over the years that they basically can't touch jump freighters because of just how much of the economy of Eve is reliant on jump freighter freight to support them. 95+% of 0-0 markets, aside from like Delve and a couple other like high production areas, are almost entirely like based off of Empire markets for everything aside from like battleship and capital hulls. And I'm sure most of the modules for those ships are produced in Empire as well. If they were to go after jump freighters in a meaningful way, I'm not going to say the economy of 0-0 Eve would collapse, but it would certainly not be good. And those incredible guys that do the logistics and do the market stocking and do all those things that make the game work, they already put in enough hours doing really weird, shitty stuff. And so asking them to do double or triple that for less reward and more hassle, it's a it's a tough thing to ask, and I think they're very cognizant of just what that would mean.
I think the main thing here is invest in topes, folks.
I'm just looking forward to the words Trail of Tears coming back. A lot of people are going to get caught at midpoints. A lot of people are going to get caught on neutral forts that slightly aggress. Somebody neutral to you undocks and aggresses you just as you land from your Sino. That's going to be a lot of sales that go wrong.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
people jumping to the New Eden Trading Company places are going to be in a lot more risk now.
Well, yeah, all the public forts are public keep stars are basically like no-go zones from now on. It's the funny thing. Those things are going to have a cloaked Hector, set up off them 24/7. I'm sure now. So
But
I can't see anyone ever using them as a Sino.
I mean, wouldn't they still just be able to dock up though? I mean, it's not a undockable thing.
Actually, I don't know how the mechanics work with a Titan on a keep star. Can they just dock?
Yeah, Titan and supers can dock into Keepstar just fine, so that's not going to be an issue. But when people jump their supers to like the Fortizars and Losec, and right now they're perfectly fine, they just safe lock and they're good. Now, you jump in your super, oh surprise, someone was waiting to warp to that Sino beacon and you're tackled.
Yeah, so I don't think it's going to change anything with.
Yeah, no, that
those
won't have any
groups.
change on those keep stars. But certainly all the public Fortizars and the vast majority of Fortizars and Losec are definitely going to lose that utility, which will be a pretty big hit to a lot of people who use those on a pretty regular basis.
All right, well, that's just the first half of these changes, which do sound quite positive. I mean, things could go wrong here, and I hope CCP is willing to keep touching these gameplay mechanics, and if they require changes, I hope they have the strength to go back to them and say, well, we fucked that up. Let's pull it back, But the next set of changes in the same devlog are for the Sovereignty and Entosis link. So it reads like this in the upcoming March release. We will also include a set of tweaks to the Entosis link module and Sov capture events. We are currently planning the following changes to the Entosis link. We are going to allow remote assistance to subcapital ships with Entosis links running, including remote reps. Significantly reduced the max ranges to 20 kilometers for the T1 and 50 kilometers for the T2. Significantly reduced fitting requirements for the T2 module. It will now be 20 power grid and 5 CPU. There will be a 100% bonus to sensor strength to any ship with an actively cycling Entosis link. And being able to remote rep the linking ship also makes it easier to run multiple redundant links, which reduces the power of alpha doctrines in Sov capture events. And for the events, the Sov capture events themselves, there are proposed changes to increase the score gained per node capture from 5% to 7%, and reduce the number of starting nodes from 5 to 4, and increase the random node spawn chance by 14%. So where do you guys want to start on this? I mean, this is a complete shakeup of current Sov system ships right now. Like, what's the most popular right now? High-speed Rapiers at max range with T2 links? Throwaway Atrons or Griffins?
If CCP had made this Fozzie Sov at the start, I probably actually would have been a pretty big fan. I think that's a terrific change.
I don't know if it's a terrific change. Oh, I mean, it is a terrific change to the current system. But if you went back to the old system, I don't know if this is that much better than the old system. Like, we're all viewing this from the rose tint of dealing with Fozzie Sov AIDS version that we've all dealt with like the last 2 or 3 years. So anything is better than that. So it's pretty hard for them to fuck this up in a meaningful way. So, but this is better. Like, what we had is bad. This is much better. Is it the final iteration of the Sov system? maybe. I can't tell you what this is gonna, how this is gonna work in terms of it's gonna be a good system or not, but it's certainly gonna be better. It's hard to say anything could not be better.
All right, we're gonna give Chad a chance. We're gonna bring this Tachi in.
Oh Jesus!
I mean, if it goes poorly, yeah, All right, thanks for joining us, Itachi. If you are the real Itachi. Well, maybe not. All right, well, we'll just continue on.
So, but in regards to the change, I mean, I've only dabbled in Sov recently. We haven't owned Sov in probably almost 2 years now. But I can tell you one thing, that when the best thing to Sov one with is a 500 MN Rapier, 500 MN Hugin, and the best way to defend is Griffins or something like that, there's a problem.
I'll tell
Well,
you.
that's not 100% correct. I mean, the best thing to Entosis with is a Entosis fax for the most part. If you're, have the regional control level to do that. As far as Entosis rapiers go, those are the best things to use in terms of a very conflicted environment. I don't know if necessarily they're as good as many people think they are. Even if they are indeed, effective at troll or Entosising under some light pressure.
The Fuzzy Sov, or Sov in general, since they introduced this, is probably the only event that can unanimously make my corp not log in and make FCs just straight log off. Like, I think this is good. It's going to actually force fights, depending on what ships people use, and it gives you a reason to go there. Like, you could send your little small response fleet if it's somebody in a crappy frigate, and then if they show a real fleet, they can't just like, okay, well, we're going to moonwalk our rapier out and the rest of the fleet warps off. Like, they're going to actually have to fight or bring something meaningful, which is what it should be for something as important as Sov.
Yeah, I think the new system will give you the opportunities to fight over the nodes a little more than the old system, where it was much more, who can solve race better, and the fact you couldn't rep anything meant that your options were basically to speed or range tank, which the Rapier kind of did both of well. I think that certainly there will be many situations now where you can go after node A and B and lose node C, and people will be fighting each other in smaller ships, but not necessarily just Entosis claws anymore. It should be a interesting environment for at least a little while until a meta develops around it.
I think the lack of a Fozzie Claw is going to be the greatest thing of this. It's not going to be like, oh, we have a Sov event, everybody getting claws. It's, oh, hey, we actually have options now. And the hostiles have to bring something meaningful if we want. Like, you can throw a damnation on grid, and you can't just show up in a claw. What is your shitty little claw fleet going to do to a damnation receiving reps? Like, you have to fight for it if you want it.
Yeah, and well, in many cases, if you can't form a fleet that is comparable to what the defenders or attackers can form, then you're going to be in a situation where you can't really contest the timer anymore. There's no more Fozzie Claw options versus, if you are close at least in size to the attacker or defender, then there'll be situations where, you form a fleet, they form a fleet, and you can use small, sub gangs to attack Entosisers while you force a fight at a different location, right? Because there's still multiple nodes, so that there's opportunities to create interesting and dynamic kind of skirmish warfare. But it's not necessarily, the same toxic, chase claws around that we've got right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to force people to form bigger fleets and whatnot. But again, it's going to go the other way. If you go against a bigger group, you're going to be dealing with faxes on nodes. So it's going to go both ways. We'll see how it plays out, though.
Yeah, faxes on nodes is definitely going to be a problem for anyone trying to attack or defend Sov when they're at a non-supremacy point. But on the other hand, if somebody has to commit a fax to Entosis a node, at the very least, that gives you some, you force them to put some escalation on the field, and opens up opportunities to pick up meaningful wins, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's not undoable. I mean, we proved that you can take catalysts and kill faxes on nodes. It's
Yeah, exactly.
just a matter of how you go about it. But again, if you go against a group, say like Goonswarm or against you all, that's what you're going to have to deal with. You have to be able to pony up and deal with that situation or plan it out right if you want to make any kind of gains in that regard.
Well, the funny thing is, this actually plays into how the new jump fatigue mechanics are going to work. Because previously, if you had 200 bombers, which was one of the original defenses we came up against faxes, you could effectively only go after one fax, right? You jump on one fax, and then you're all fatigued for an hour. So you can't just zip your Black Ops in the system, jump on the next fax the system over, and force their escalation on one onto the next onto the other, right? Like they were, you never had the ability to go after multiple Intosis capitals at a time in an effective way. But with the new fatigue changes, you will have a significant increase in the mobility of fleets with a localized Titan or Bridger versus very static targets, which is really going to revitalize just the ability to defend or attack large Intosis targets.
I mean, this also removes the just boring mechanic of running out very cheap fit Griffins and disrupting a more valuable ship that's on the target, right?
Well, to be fair, Griffins they'll still work, randomized DCM and all that, but certainly they won't be as effective as they were before, which is good.
I know there's a lot of people that'll probably get mad about it, but I think a good change with this too is that the little guy cannot do nearly as much as they want to a group like Test or NC or Goons. Like, it's not going to be this little 5-man alliance like, oh, I'm going to troll and take all these nodes. You have to put meaningful assets on grid if you want to fight it. And there's tons of space out there that's not even occupied at all. Like, you'll see ADM 1. There's nothing there. There might not even be an iHub at all. So if people want to fight, go fight there. It doesn't make sense that you think your little 20-man group of bombers or whatever that's harassing one of the major alliances in the game should be able to do anything meaningful. It's just not how it works in war.
Well, that's not true though. A small group can absolutely cause problems for large groups, but they have to be persistent and consistent. And those are the words that kind of sound nice, but basically what that means, they got to be willing to put the hard work in. 20 guys
you're just not going to do it with like a little Rifter group.
Yeah, but I've seen in many instances, small style entities who just perched in a system, and they become so much work to remove that you just can't put in the time to do it. Like we kind of have a little bit like that with the Simple Farmers Group in Catch, where they've kind of set up a control of 9 KOE, and they're just not worth the effort to remove, right? But I've seen it much more effectively done by entities, and I don't know, Fountain, Pureblind, different NPC regions over the years, because usually you need at least somewhere you can stage from. NPC regions provide that. But if you're willing to put the work in, unless your enemy lives in that system, in that area, it becomes very hard for them to constantly project and deal with you when they've got other things going on. And most big alliances and coalitions do. They have things they need to do that they can't devote the consistent amount of time they need to deal with those small entities. And I think those entities can absolutely win in this kind of a system. It's just going to be, I don't want to say harder, it's just going to be easier for the larger group to retake that SOV or punish them for holding it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, when you're talking active space, like it's not like in it holding something way out in Cloud Ring or Southern Pureblind or something. Like if you can range it, then yes, I think was more the point I was trying to get at.
Look at groups. There's smaller entities in the drone lands, Ethereum Reach, Spire area, that have been poking and kind of living there since the DRF and Tri have been fighting. They're still holding that space there, and there's not been any real meaningful attempts to push them out quite yet from the DRF, but they've managed to hold that bits of SOV there for quite a long time now.
Well, to be fair, the drone regions have been crumbling pretty hard the last couple months, and even before that, to the combination of Skill Yourself and Hard Knocks and Volta, and then all the wormhole groups who kind of set up influence in that area, just as kind of a farming preserve. And now that they've all got, I don't know, dozens of supers each up there, I saw the other day, I think they had almost 50 supers in a fleet of like wormholers and Skill Yourself. And I was like, Jesus Christ, XIX hasn't, reasserted control on the northern drones for a long time. It's becoming very obvious that those small entities, if not properly swatted down, will grow out of control if you leave them to their own devices.
I just don't see them pushing back up into the north. I think you'll see some shifts up there eventually.
You don't see DRF going back up north to northern drones?
I don't see them going in a meaningful way. I mean, they still got a lot of clearing out to do in Innsmother. Then they have to push into Ethereum Reach, push all those guys out. You're talking months upon months worth of work, and you're never going to be able to push out those groups like Volta and Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say.
I mean, they have to go again and hire other groups to come help them, which is they've proved they've done before, but that's what they're going to have to do to make this work, because they themselves cannot, because the time zone a lot of these groups are working in is either U.S. time zone, or they're hitting stuff that's so far away the DR have no possibility to respond to their renters, their subgroups, the B team, whoever.
That goes back to, are they actually using it though? Like the region that DRF is in, could they defend that from a random small group? Yes. Like could Test defend against from Skill Yourself if they moved into their range? Yes. Like it's, if you're there, it shouldn't be a little guy thing. It's when you try to overextend, which I mean we all saw happen with Goonswarm. You overextend and you're going to face the price from getting attacked from all sides and starting to slowly get things picked away at.
I mean, chat seems pretty adamant that even if you were to take a low ADM system, you'd still have to deal with the Citadels, and the Citadels are still quite strong, even for a small group, if there's a defender, right?
I don't know, man. The meta to clear Citadels is continue to improve and improve and improve. Void bombs are nerfed, Citadel damage is nerfed, the timers are nerfed. Like, it is not anywhere near as bad clearing Citadels as it was a month ago. Like, I don't know how many thousand Citadels have died in the last month. It is really a pretty significant improvement when it clears Citadels. I mean, yeah, Fortizar still gives you a lot of defensive ability, but it won't solve a 20 versus 200. It might give you an option in like a 80 versus 120, but like a Citadel isn't going to buy you out of
Yeah. Even with the fits have to be right too. If you have cap launchers and stuff like that for your Fortizar, you're not going to do much to subcaps.
Well, to be fair, the subcap launchers don't do anything to subcaps either.
Yeah, well, either way, you get what I'm saying. They're not near as strong as they can be in that regard. You just take a cheap doctrine like the T1 battleship spams what they've been bringing. Grind it down, be done with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a fight this weekend. We were in a 50-man Ferox fleet, and we were fighting a Fortizar. First timer. Fortizar was gunned. The defensive fleet was one ballsy Bifrost, who kept throwing himself at us. And we lost a couple Feroxes because they didn't broadcast. We had to deal with those new energy void neutralization zones, which start off as a beacon and then hit into the area around it. Which we could have avoided better, I suppose, but we had to eat a bunch of those. Then we ate a bunch of the damage bombs, and of course the damage bombs start to build up after a while, so if you've taken a lot of damage bombs, especially after you've just been cap hit, even with our cap boosters, we had to cycle that to keep our hardeners up, but people were stacking up to, 50, 75% shield damage and had to broadcast eventually. So the broadcast spam was real. Logi had to keep up. I think our Logi ratio was like 1 Logi for every 4 Feroxes. I know some groups run it like 1-to-1, which is fucking ridiculous. But, we had a good fight there. We lost a couple Feroxes, killed a couple Bifrost, and got the first timer down. Second timer, on the other hand, the defending fleet decided to form up. It was in their prime time. We brought on 60 guys and had a little bit of backup on call. And they did too. So we fought their Hurricane fleet issue fleet, about 20 guys. And the Fortizar was the determining factor of the fight. Like, fighting the Fortizar itself was a boss fight in itself. And to have 2 other fleets roaming around grid trying to harass us just made it impossible. Like, the boss fight of the Fortizar was enough. And we had vastly outnumbered the defender, right? The defender advantage is quite strong.
I think it's all a matter of scale. In that scale, yeah, it's a super strong tool. But on a scale, between even try and test and Goonswarm Imperium and whatnot, when you can toss 200 nerds at something, it becomes kind of trivial.
I don't know, Manny. We had to take down Red Alliance staging Fortizar this weekend, and we had, I don't know, probably 700 or 800 legacy, and they had 500 or 600. But we still treated the Fortizar with respect. We engaged from proper ranges. We went through the motions of a proper clean Fortizar engage, because if you make mistakes around a Fortizar, you will get punished for it, even at the larger scales.
Yeah, none of those mechanics, except for the target painter scram, which was used on the odd guy who fell out of line or the odd Logi, they were all AoE attacks. So it must scale.
The change to the point in the web is a little bit understated. That was one thing that was kind of cancerous, especially for a lot of people fighting them, because if you had someone webbed and painted the entire time, it can be an issue to deal with point and scram. Excuse me.
Anyways, getting back to that's a little bit of a stray from the Entosis link changes. The forum thread on eForums is quite long with proposed changes, mods, complaints, and this one is a lot more negative than the jump fatigue changes. I don't know why exactly, but there were some interest in perhaps adding mechanics to the nodes to give them more diversity, perhaps changing them into a faction warfare style node where you couldn't Sino onto the node, perhaps making it so you could make the Sino inhibitor module that's available in the game a little bit better, maybe making it a module you could attach to a ship. I mean, Hector would be a good choice for that, or maybe a command ship. Or making the mobile Sino jammer easily scoopable instead of anchored for so long. How do you guys feel about those kind of changes that could make it so caps wouldn't be so oppressive on nodes?
I think anytime you put a Sino inhibitor on a ship, that is going to become overpowered and abused.
Okay, could you go over the exact suggestion again? You want a Sino jammer on nodes or near the nodes, or what was the suggestion exactly?
I think the problem they wish to solve is caps being used on the objective nodes. So their recommendations for solutions would be some kind of Sino inhibition, either through an anomaly or a factor of the node. Maybe randomly some nodes prevent Sinos from being lit, a module that you could attach to ships, or improvements to the current mobile Sino inhibitor.
Yeah, I think the easiest one there is just to improve the mobile Sino inhib, which is currently pretty garbage, unfortunately. If you try to make any changes around Entosis nodes themselves, they're just going to probably have the counter effect. If you make it so that nodes are sino-jammed, then all that's going to happen is people are going to warp in their capitals, and then those capitals that are already in grid have a decisive advantage against, the counter capitals, basically, because, they can be bubbled on their warp ins, etc. So, sino-jamming the nodes themselves is not an effective solution. Making caps unable to Entosis doesn't work either because, facts are just going to wrap a heavy tank prophecy or damnation or something like that. You have an apostle sitting on a damnation. You may as well be trying to, do something very difficult. I can't think of a good analogy. So obviously, the answer to that becomes the mobile sino inhibitor, which has been known to be garbage for a long time because it's got so little HP, and effectively, it's very easy for capitals to, kill it before it goes online in many cases. And even when it is online, you have a correct size group of capitals, it's nothing to one-shot them almost instantly. So I think definitely the mobile sino inhibitor would be one of the better options, and the cost of and size of mobile sino inhibitors is both prohibitive. So I think there's great options for improving the mobile sino inhibitor there.
Is there concern just with people using capitals on the nodes? Is that what the whole discussion is related around?
Yeah, that's the biggest worry I'm seeing from smaller groups is that they're just going to stack faxes on them, and
I mean, it seems like it should be a pretty simple fix. You just make it like faction warfare where there's different sized nodes. One's a capital node and one's a subcap node. The subcap node doesn't allow sinos or something like that. I mean, you don't need to change the sino inhib module necessarily. I mean, I do agree there's a lot of room for improvement on that, but if that's their concern, it's a pretty quick fix. You've already reduced it to 4 nodes, so just make it spawn 4 subcap nodes, 4 cap nodes, and hey, if Goonswarm or Test or somebody wants to commit all capitals to node fights, well, why don't you try to beat them on the subcap nodes?
Well, I just kind of explained to you, I thought, why that wouldn't work. If you have nodes that are specific, like, what do you mean by a capital node and what do you mean by a subcap node?
Just make it a subcap node like they do for sites. It's a gated node.
So there's an acceleration gate.
Yeah.
So where do you think all the conflict will move to now?
All I'm saying is if that's what their biggest fear is, if you create other nodes, I feel like that resolves it. It shouldn't be that big of an issue. Maybe I underestimate how many bubbles people are going to try to put up around an acceleration gate.
I mean, literally all that would happen is you would have the guy with the Entosis module go in the site and set up a large bubble on the gate, and you'd put, tackle and with the sino or the capitals right in there. Like, acceleration gates are not going to work in 0-0 in terms of preventing capital Entosis.
Yeah, and I mean, even if people decide to fight inside the site, that gives an extreme advantage to the defenders.
I think we've triggered chat a little bit here, but I mean, that would solve Fozzie Claws. You could warp in Fozzie Claws straight into the site.
Why not?
Because they would have to land on the gate and then jump through the gate into the Entosis arena.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you're also limiting another way of playing it. I dislike Scepter Claws and all that other stuff for Fozzie stuff, but again, if you make it to where you're taking a gate, it's going to put you in at a certain location at 0. So if there's another fleet there, you have no way other than to engage at 0 of wherever that other fleet is at. So it limits the gameplay, and then it's going to further limit things, and that's how people are going to start gaming the system that way. With a gate,
Well, it'd be the similar mechanics to faction warfare, right? This is where we're driving this kind of idea from.
My opinion is maybe just not gates. Make it similar to certain anomalies where you can't sino in, if that's the big case. I think adding a gate in there limits it a little bit too much.
I mean, I get what Vilu's saying. If you make it a sino inhib node, it's just going to make the defender overpowered as shit, because you could just throw a couple faxes in on there and have your cap fleet waiting, and good luck for an attacker to come in and force you off.
Well, you could still warp into a scouted, Cove Ops. You just can't start with the fight immediately on grid by sinoing in your dreads at 0,
Well, how are you going to get your dreads there at all?
You warp them in at range. Phoenixes.
Have you ever tried to get caps in on a grid where the enemy's got 2 or 3 dictors that know what they're doing. It's not, so you need to get control of that grid first with subcaps, which means, you're fighting a subcap battle with no capitals, effectively, in many cases.
But can't you see the gameplay video right now? Subcaps fighting the caps. Caps warp in. The tide of the battle changes.
Something like that.
I think it's a good CCP video that doesn't actually portray FuzzySoft, just like many of their other videos.
Hold on. All of their videos are direct in-game footage.
Yeah,
Oh,
most of
yeah.
those fights.
From even 30 years. I don't know, a couple other complaints in the thread. People think that this will force more big fights with so fewer nodes. And that the desire of the Entosa system was to draw out the fights onto multiple nodes, so there wasn't as much lag, so there wasn't as many situations where the blob won over, skilled medium-sized groups.
Well, I think if you watched the Sob map in Immensity the last 5 months, the culture really showed, or the remnants of the culture, which are now in PLO, I guess, higher than Everscorp, I think it was, really showed just how effective a small group who specializes in Tosas can be at just destroying a significantly larger entity with the way the mechanics previously worked. I don't think there will be a group will be as able to do that now, just because the old system, or the current system, I should say, really incentivized specific gameplay lines. But I think we're definitely in for some changes.
It is going to be very interesting how this shakes out the meta. I mean, no more will you be warping onto an Entosis node, and then the guy will be 200, 350 kilometers away from you. You will always pretty much be within 100 of your target. And that's engagement range for most ships. Alright, so overall, you guys think these are positive changes? You thumbs up? You excited?
I would rather they deleted iHubs than keep having what SOV is currently.
I mean, that has to be coming, right? It has to be coming as part of an information node. I mean, the iHub, the TCU is useless. Like, nobody cares about the TCU.
I just meant that it literally could not have gotten much worse than it currently was.
Well, the thing is that with the current system, TCUs are 100 mil and iHubs are like 700 mil, right? So the fact that nobody cares about the TCU isn't really as true as many people like to say. That flag on the map is disturbing how important it is to perception and the way in which people will treat space and their attempts to attack it and so on. Those 100 mil TCUs are pretty significant, as crazy as it sounds.
But it's the last objective of a campaign.
In some cases. In some, it's the first, as crazy as it sounds.
Yeah, like if you ask the DRF, they're all about the TCUs being dropped in all these places.
Yeah, I mean, the logical course of action, the logical theory is that the iHub is the most important key point. I'm just speaking to the reality, which is that many entities do not work that way for a variety of reasons.
And then another big ask from the thread is kill bells for iHubs, TCUs, and these Entosis timers.
I think that would be pretty cool. I don't know how they'd go about doing it program-wise, but I think it'd be really cool, especially with the amount that goes into upgrading iHubs.
Yeah, the show kill mail with the iHub upgrades in it, and Entosis work is thankless stuff anyway. So the guy who does a node himself, to get something like that out of it would only help things.
I think it would be awesome if we get logistics on kill mills before we try and worry about getting Entosis on kill mills.
I don't know, man. Your logistics pilots shouldn't be worried about getting on kill mills. They should be worrying about repping.
Well, that's my point, is that it would be nice if they would get kill mails through the people they have repped, I should say. without having to worry about having a horde gun or horde drones or whatever.
I've heard rumors that is coming.
That would be awesome.
I heard rumors that we were going to get a new region and Angel Titans too, but that hasn't happened.
I heard a presentation by CCP 3 years ago that we were getting shield slaves.
Shield slaves, I have no comment on. But think about how much development is being done on ESI and the back end of the game, and how fast those changes are occurring. And then picture, a year in the future.
I feel like the kill mills for soft structures should be relatively easy. I mean, it is already registering that a node disappears and it gives credit to a certain entity. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of background in the coding that would go into it for you to magically get a kill mail when the iHub finally dies, kind of thing. And what do you do if a friendly tried to save it or whatever? But I think that should be pretty simple compared to logistics.
I think the judge brought it up as well. We were discussing little things and stuff like that. We all assume that it should be easy, but again, it's just a smaller and smaller group that's working on the game. I think at least we're going these steps right now, which is helpful. Hopefully, we'll get there. Just got to take it a step at a time, I guess.
I think everyone's happy with any change is good change. Stagnation be damned. All right, any last thoughts on these changes? Anything you feel like we've missed or CCP's missed? Sweet. All right. I just wanted to cover the upcoming Eve meets in real life. If you like chatting with some Eve nerds, if you like meeting a couple new people who share that same ridiculously specific hobby that we all do, you can check out a couple of the Eve meets on evemeet.net. Upcoming on February 28th is a Minneapolis casual meetup. In March, on March 10th, there's a Toronto monthly meetup. It's Alpha X45's birthday, so they're giving away a copy of the Danger game. So check that out if you're in the GTA. And there is G Fleet, March 17th in Dusseldorf, Germany. And then, of course, the big one on the roadmap is April 11th, FanFest in Iceland. If you haven't got your tickets, you should get them. Bunch of big changes. I'm sure we'll see a lot of the stuff we've been begging for here, either announced to come out in the following months. But look forward to it. This will be the last major FanFest in Iceland for a year, as they shuffle off FanFest to all of the ancillary places around the globe, as I think the CCP headquarters undergoes a huge renovation. So yeah, go meet some Eve nerds. All right, let's move through some shoutouts. Shout out to the guys in FedUp. We've been flying with them in Cloud Ring. A little bit spurgy on comms, but quality pilots, good times, good to fly under Silver. He's a good FC. It's good to fly under some new groups. Reach our arm out there and shake a couple new allies. It's good times. Billy? Any shout out? Nope. All right, Pitts, any shout out?
Well, big shout out to CCP for finally making some of the changes people have been begging for so long. Hopefully it's a step in the right direction. It'll be a good improvement to the game. And shout out to Goonswarm. Shadow State's the best corp, but we love you guys.
Yeah, can confirm. Orion.
Shout out to everyone in Try. And thanks for everyone for showing up tonight.
Beautiful. Sven?
Shout out to Rote and shout out to Kanye North, the #1 feeder in our alliance.
Ouch. Yeah, I had a bad week of feeding. Yeah, let's not talk about it. Anyhow, if you've enjoyed the show, if you're catching this live, we host this show on a podcast form. You can find us on the Eve Podcasts RSS. You can find us on Crossing Zebras RSS, or you can find us on YouTube or on our website. You just search Mind Clash, and you should find us on YouTube, and mindclash.live is the website. You can find the RSS there. If you were listening to this in post and don't realize that we do a live show, we record this show live Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, or Tuesdays at 0300 Eve time on Twitch, twitch.tv/mindclashlive. And follow the whole team, producers, hosts on Twitter, at Meredith_Eve, at Orion_Sa_Solo, and the Mind Clash Twitter is something Kale holds down. Speaking of Kale, he should be back next week. If anyone's been missing our beer brewing co-host, he should be back from his military stuff and should be back to rant about all of these CCB changes as he does. So thank you all for watching. Thank you, Zarvox, for the big host there mid-show. Thank you, Nama, for subscribing there mid-show. Thanks to all the followers. Thank you, guests. Without you, we would not have a show. And to everyone in post, thanks for tuning in and listening to us. It's always great to have the odd person come by and say, hey, thanks for doing the show. I really appreciate it. It really is rewarding when you get those little thumbs ups from people. So thank you all, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mind Clash Podcast.